You are walking home on a mild January day. The air is warm. The sun is shining. Suddenly, a sound like an approaching elevated train becomes a deafening roar. The ground beneath your feet trembles, and then a 25-foot wall of dark, thick liquid comes rushing toward you at 35 miles per hour. It's not water. It's not oil. It's molasses. This is the true, bizarre, and tragic story of the Great Molasses Flood of 1919. A disaster so unbelievable it sounds like a scene from a pulp novel. Yet it remains a dark, sticky stain on the history of Boston, Massachusetts. The setting is Boston's North End, January 15, 1919. A massive steel tank, towering 50 feet high and 90 feet in diameter, stood near the harbor. It belonged to the Purity Distilling Company, a subsidiary of U.S. Industrial Alcohol, USIA. The tank was an industrial giant, capable of holding up to 2.5 million gallons of raw molasses, which the company used to produce industrial alcohol, a key component in munitions, and soon, liquor, as Prohibition was just around the corner. The day was unseasonably warm. Temperatures had shot up into the 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Inside the gargantuan tank, nearly 2.3 million gallons of molasses sat fermenting, its internal temperature raised from a recent delivery to facilitate pumping. The warmer the liquid, the greater the pressure building within the tank's already dangerously thin, shoddily constructed walls. The residents of the North End had already complained about the tank. They noticed it leaked constantly. Children would even collect the oozing sticky molasses in cups. Management's solution to the visible signs of danger? They had the tank painted brown to camouflage the leaks. No structural engineer had ever properly inspected the tank, which was made of steel plates too thin to bear the weight of its sweet, dense contents. Then, at approximately 12:30 p.m., the inevitable happened. With a sound that witnesses described as a machine gun rat-a-tat-tat as the rivets burst, followed by a monumental crash, the massive tank exploded. Pieces of its half-inch thick steel plates flew out like deadly shrapnel. What followed was a nightmare of sugary chaos. A devastating wave of molasses, estimated to be between 15 and 40 feet high, erupted and swept through Commercial Street. It moved with the speed of an express train, 35 miles per hour. The force was astonishing. It instantly pulverized buildings, stripping them from their foundations. The elevated train tracks nearby were hit so hard that a streetcar was knocked completely off its rails. A firehouse was lifted off its foundations and crushed. Wagons, automobiles, and horses were tossed like toys. The initial destruction was horrific, but the molasses quickly turned deadly in a new way. As the thick, heavy liquid poured over the streets and alleyways, the sudden drop in temperature from the air quickly cooled and thickened the molasses, turning it from a rushing wave into a slow, viscous, and suffocating trap. People caught in the deluge were drowned or pinned under debris. Rescue efforts were agonizingly slow. Rescuers, including police and naval cadets, had to wade through a hip-deep, sticky goo that was virtually impossible to move through quickly, like trying to run in quicksand. They were covered head to toe in the dark syrup, making it difficult to distinguish the living from the dead, the injured from the debris. The disaster killed 21 people and injured 150 others. Among the dead were dock workers, children heading to lunch, and a young fire captain. The cleanup was a monumental task. Fire hoses pumping seawater were used to try to wash the molasses into the harbor, but it was a fight against nature. The molasses clung to everything: buildings, sidewalks, even lampposts. The harbor itself was stained brown. For weeks, thousands of gallons of sticky brown water were hauled away. Legend, backed by local reports, claims that the scent of molasses lingered in the North End for decades, especially on hot summer days. The ensuing legal battle was one of the longest in Massachusetts history. The victims' families sued USIA, which initially tried to claim the tank had been bombed by anarchists. The investigation, however, pointed squarely at criminal negligence in the construction and maintenance of the tank. In 1925, USIA was finally ordered to pay $600,000 in settlements, the equivalent of over $10 million today. More importantly, the Great Molasses Flood was a wake-up call that transcended the sheer oddity of the event. The tragedy was a direct catalyst for change, forcing Massachusetts to adopt stricter zoning and construction codes, including the requirement that structural engineers officially approve industrial blueprints before any large-scale building could commence. So the next time you pour syrup on your pancakes, remember the forgotten disaster of 1919, a rogue wave of sweetness that became a tsunami of tragedy, proving that even the most benign substance, when neglected and contained carelessly, can unleash a truly astonishing and fatal force.